Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to check the video out, because got some story time for y'all today. Guys, I want to go over what are the top 5 most memorable co-anglers that I've ever fished with. Now you got to consider, I have fished with a ton of them. I figured it up. I think it was like, God, something like 2,000 different co-anglers I fished between all the tournaments I fished, Bassmaster, FLW, regional tournaments, Central Pro-Am, Toyota Series, Bassmaster Opens, like 2,000 different people over the past 40 years. So to have the top 5 that stand out above all those is something I think you guys would like to hear. So we're going to get into that in today's video. Also, guys, just a quick invitation before we get started. I'd like to invite everybody to please consider becoming a channel member here of Intuitive Angling. And as a channel member, you get private videos, 2 private videos every week that are not seen by the public. I usually try to reserve some of the more secretive stuff for the members. Also some access to my personal email address with some memberships for your fishing questions. So if you're interested, just go to my YouTube homepage, Intuitive Angling, and click on the join button for information there. So I really appreciate that. Okay, one of the great things about tournament fishing, as long as I've done it, is getting to fish around so many different people. I have met so many different people from different walks of life that, you know, some of them are still good friends with me today. I mean, I've had wide range of experiences with it. It's really enabled me to get a good perspective on, you know, human behavior and human nature, and, you know, seeing how everybody is. And I can tell you one thing right now, guys, where it doesn't matter what your philosophical background, religious beliefs, political affiliations, all that type of stuff, we got a lot in common. And when you get out on the water, a lot of that other stuff sort of breaks away, and you realize how much we all have in common. But regardless, I do have 5 stories here I want to share with you that sort of stand out above. Some of them are funny, some of them are a little bit serious, so we'll get into that. Okay, guys, the first one, and some of these I've mentioned before in the past, some of them I haven't. So some of them I've talked about a couple of years ago. So if you've heard 1 or 2 of them, you know, you probably haven't heard all of these though. But the first one I wanted to talk about is I drew this guy. God, I can't remember where, Beaver Lake or somewhere. Can't remember what it was. But you get to, this was probably, God, 25 years ago, 20 years ago or so. And back then, one of the things you have to remember is that co-anglers 25 years ago are not like the co-anglers today. They were truly, most of them were truly amateur anglers. They were wanting to learn about bass fishing. They didn't know anything about it. And today, most of the co-anglers you draw are good enough to be pros. It's an unbelievable metamorphosis how they've changed. But back then, not so much. But I do this one guy, like I said, I can't remember if it was FLW tournament or whatever, but I could tell he hadn't fished much. And, you know, he was sort of asking those type of questions that, you know, you didn't hear from people. But one of the first things he said that morning, he goes, we're sort of trying to ask a little bit about how the day was going to go. And he goes, well, what time do we pull over for lunch? And I said, well, we don't pull over for lunch. You know, we don't take a lunch break. This is a tournament. And he goes, so we're not going to stop and eat lunch somewhere like that, or take a break and eat lunch? And I said, well, no. I said, you know, I usually, you know, have some type of snack I eat on the way to the next spot or anything. He didn't say much about it. So we were fishing down this bank, and about right around noon or 11:30 or something, I look back there, and he is laying out this picnic spread on the back of the boat. He's got like a, you know, like a 3x3 blanket down there, a little, you know, mat or something like that. And he pulls out one of his bags, this complete spread, like you see you're going to go on a picnic with your family. He had like all these Tupperware, you know, tubs. He had like fried chicken. He had some homemade coleslaw. He had baked beans. He had all these little separate containers like spread out on the back deck, you know, and he's sitting down there, you know, in the back, and he's just having a picnic on the back deck. And it just so happened, I looked back there and I said something like, well, you're lucky we're fishing here, because normally, you know, I move pretty fast from spot to spot. So he was really fortunate, the fact that the bank that I was fishing, I'd been on it for a while and I was still fishing it. But he sat there back there for like 45 minutes and just enjoyed his lunch, like it was just a fun trip on the water. So that stood out, because I've never had somebody that went to that. And it was the prettiest spread in the world. He had everything laid out like you see, like, people going to the park for a picnic back there. Like, he'd planned it out, his lunch. I guess that was a big part of his day. Okay, the next one's sort of along those lines. I remember drawing this other guy out, and this has been quite a while ago, 20, maybe even 30 years ago. And I talked to him the night before and everything, and he didn't really ask me much about it. He didn't ask me much about the day or what we're going to be doing. And he shows up that next morning, and he gets in the boat, and he's got like a little duffel bag, and I guess he had his rain suit or something like that. And he puts in the boat, he's got a spin cast rod and reel in a bubble pack. Now this bubble pack, excuse me, it's like the ones you'd go to Walmart or something, and it wasn't a Snoopy outfit, but it was a bubble pack rod and reel, a 2-piece bubble pack rod and reel. And he had this little bitty, like, plastic baby blue tackle box. I mean, this little tackle box was probably like 12 inches long, and about, the kind that you get for kids. And he gets in the boat, and that's all he's got is this bubble wrap spin cast rod and this little blue box there. So I'm looking over there, and I said, "Is that your outfit for the day?" And he goes, "Yeah, I just picked it up last night." And he goes, "What do you think I need to tie on?" And he opens the little tackle box, and he had like some, MEP spinners and beetle spins and like a little Rapala minnow in there or something like that. All of them still in the box. So anyway, he's just sitting there. We're getting ready to take off, and we're talking, and he's still got his bubble pack rod. It's still in the package. He hadn't even taken it out yet. So we get to the first spot, and he finally takes this bubble pack off, and he starts opening up the plastic outfit on his rod and reel, and he puts it together, and it's got like kinky, looks like 12-pound mono on it like that. And he goes, "Well, what do you think I need to throw like that?" So I said, "Well, I don't know if they're going to catch me like on a beetle spin." And I gave him a shaky head. So he put the shaky head, and he's thrown this shaky head. It's about probably a 5-foot rod, maybe something like 2-piece 5-foot rod spin cast. I think it was a Zebco 33 or something like that. And anyway, so I gave him this shaky head, like with a 1/4 ounce, so he could actually get some distance on it, because, they're so kinky. And he wound up catching one fish on it that day. But I've never fished with anybody that bubble pack rod with them in there. Okay, the next one, guys, was a tournament. This was a tournament I was fishing at you guys may have heard me, some of the old timers probably heard this one, but that's something that stood out a little bit. We were fishing a tournament down, it's the FLW tournament down at Lake Okeechobee. And it was one of those years at Okeechobee where the water level was super low. I mean, you couldn't even hardly get out on the main lake. And anyway, I was throwing a crankbait down in the Rim Canal. If you're not familiar with the Rim Canal, it's this canal that lines Okeechobee, and it's got some deep water in it. And in the tournament, most people were fishing in the Rim Canal because the lake was so low. And anyway, in practice, I was throwing a jerkbait and a crankbait parallel on the bank, because the banks dropped off pretty quick, and I had to get right on the bank to make a long parallel cast down the bank. And my co-angler that was fishing with me, he was my practice partner. He didn't have anywhere to fish except throwing out the back of the boat, so he figured out he could take a Carolina rig and drag it behind the boat, and he wound up catching 5 or 6 keepers every day of practice, dragging it behind me like that. So anyway, I drew this guy the first day of the tournament, and I sort of told him, what we were going to be doing, and I could tell he wasn't happy about it. I could tell that the idea of him, having to throw out the back of the boat he wasn't happy about that. And I told him, I said, "Look," I said, "the only way that I can get a bite on this crankbait is to parallel. I can't get a bite on it thrown at a 45-degree angle. I got to get right on the bank to do this." I said, "But don't worry about it, because my buddy, my partner, or my practice partner, caught a limit every day throwing a Carolina rig out the back of the boat." So he didn't say much about it. We get out there and start fishing, and it wasn't 5 minutes into the day. We had just started fishing, and I turn around there, and he's laying down on the back deck. And I'm like, "You okay? What's the matter?" I thought he was sick or something like that. and he's laying down on the back deck, and he's got, he's got like his arms propped up on his head, and he's got his, his feet are on flat on the ground, his knees are up, but his back's on the back. And I'm like, what's the matter, man? And he goes, I'm not going to fish like this. He goes, this is a bunch of crap. He goes, I am not going to throw out the back of the boat all day long. I'm just not even going to fish. And I said, you got something against catching a limit of fish? I sit here and told you my buddy caught a limit every day throwing a Carolina rig out the back of the boat. I'm not going to fish like that. You just do what you want. I'm just going to sit back here. All day long, he just rotated between sitting back there. Occasionally he'd make a cast, but he was like adamant that he wasn't going to throw in the back of the boat, even if he could catch fish. So, I don't know. I thought that was, a little bit ridiculous. That one stands out. Okay, 2 more. The next one, guys, this was I'm not going to say which one because I don't want to identify this guy, but most pros know it. But anyway, I was fishing the FLW championship, and tough tournament to play. This particular championship, it was pretty tough, hard to get a bite. And anyway, I had got onto a pattern where I was flipping and pitching creature bait around isolated logs and stumps. And this particular place that I was fishing, it's like there'd be a lay down log on a flat or something, and I'd go up there and fish it, and then maybe 20 foot away from it there'd be another lay down log, just isolated wood targets. And it was hard to get a bite, but I was, getting enough where, I thought I could do really good in the tournament because I was catching some quality fish doing it. And anyway, there was this one co-angler that had, for 2 or 3 years before this tournament, this one co-angler was like the dreaded draw of any pro. He was like the biggest, a-hole, the biggest nightmare to fish with. It's like when his name got called out, all the other pros would look at each other and start laughing. It's like, you're going to get screwed, or you're going to have a miserable day. I mean, this guy was a freaking nightmare. He had so many complaints filed against him to the tournament directors that it was just ridiculous. So what happens the first day of the FLW championship, the most important tournament of the year? I draw this guy, and everybody looks at me and they start laughing. And I'm like, okay, I got to make the best out of this. I cannot let this throw me off my game drawing this weenie. So we get out there and we start fishing, and I'm telling him, I said right off the bat, I said, I'm, hitting these isolated logs and fishing them. I said, just let me fish them. And I said, you can have them, after I get done, because I've got to make multiple casts to him. I can't just make one. I go, okay, no problem. We get out there. It wasn't the first dang lay down log that I pulled up to. I pitched in there with my creature bait. The bait hit the water. As soon as my bait hit the water, bloop, he cast like 3 feet to the left of me on the same log. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And I didn't say anything, I thought maybe he was just excited right off the bat. And this next one and next one and next one, same thing. And then like on the third one, he catches a 5-pounder, which is a giant fish there. And I'm like, and at this point, that's all I'm thinking about. All I'm thinking about is this goober throwing 2 foot away from my bait every time. So after he caught that 5-pounder, I said, look, I have got to take my time on each one of these. I said, I've got to make 5 or 6 or 10 presentations. I said, let me make my presentations, and after I'm finished, you can fish anywhere you want to on it. And he's like, all right, Arco. So I think we went maybe 2 or 3 laydowns, and he didn't do it. And about the third laydown, he started doing it again. I'd pitch in there, and he'd pitch 2 or 3 feet or over or just around me. I'm talking like he'd pitch way up in front of the boat. And finally, I just said, okay, I gave you your chance, man. I said, now you're going to get screwed. And the rest of the day, I just completely positioned him where he could not fish whatsoever. I mean, that guy lived up to his reputation about, and the whole thing about that, it's like, when you draw somebody like that, it throws you off mentally, because it's hard enough to focus on, it's hard enough to catch the fish when you don't have to deal with some guy like that you're having to think about every cast. So I got to the point right here, I'm in the championship right off the bat in the morning, and all I can think about is this weenie in the back of the boat that's freaking thrown up in front of the boat over my line and on the same piece of cover that I'm fishing. It was a freaking miserable day. Absolutely miserable. He was in second place after the first day, by the way, with that. So that guy's lived up to his reputation. Okay, finally, well, actually, I got two more I'll tell you here. I got the next one I'll tell you about is these are a little bit more, serious ones. Is I was fishing this wasn't a tournament. This was a charity tournament. It was a Wounded Warriors tournament, and the angler that I got drawn out with in this particular Wounded Warriors tournament, he was an Iraq veteran that had gotten shot in the war, and he'd actually had a head injury, and the head injury that he got in the war, it really messed him up physically and emotionally and mentally. It's like he was in the hospital for 2 or 3 years. He'd lost a lot of bodily functions that he had, and the whole day that we fished together, it's like he was just being able to get back out of the hospital. This was like one of the first trips of it, and the whole day, guys, he related his story about what had happened in Iraq. He went through it in detail about everything that happened, and he went through all the recovery, which he never really recovered from it, and all the challenges from that, and how that one injury that he had, the one gunshot that he received to his head, it just completely altered his life from now on. I mean, he'll never be the same. And the thing that stood out to me about that particular day with him was the day of fishing we had out there. He wound up catching 4 or 5 fish. And this is one of the magical things about fishing. It's like when he caught those fish, it's like when he'd get a bite and he caught some of those fish, because he hadn't had much fishing experience, you could tell that just for a moment, everything that happened to him during the war and all of the disabilities he had as a result of that, it went away. It's like catching those fish, for even if it was just for a moment or two, it made him forget about his situation. Excuse me. Made him forget about his disabilities and everything that he had to face every single morning. I mean, guy, this was unbelievable, guys. Like I said, he was not only somebody that lost his bodily functions, but lost a lot of his relationships, everything, because what happened to him in the war, and then being able to get out there and escape from that for just a little bit. That, to me, right there, that showed me how powerful the sport of fishing was, and how precious bass fishing is to people like that. And the last one I'll tell you about here, this is sort of in those lines. I do this one guy at one time. He was another veteran, and actually he had just gotten back. I can't remember, I think it was from Afghanistan, but he'd been in the military for probably, I don't know, 12 or 15 years. And he just gotten out and everything, and we started talking, and I could tell he was one of those anglers, or one of those people that just he wanted to talk, or he needed to talk. And one of the things about it, sorry for the coughing, guys, got the sinus drainage. But one of the things about it is I don't talk much in a boat unless it's somebody that needs to talk for emotional reasons. So if I ever draw like veterans or military people like that, I'm usually all ears, and I'll talk to him all day long. And anyway, this guy was decorated veteran, Afghanistan, and anyway, he was struggling with the fact that he was getting ready to come out because he was gay, and he had a lot of anxiety because he wanted to fish tournaments and club tournaments and family. So we had this conversation pretty much all day long about this deep-seated anxiety that he had about coming out. And I was just super supportive of him, like, guy, I said, you can't worry about people like that. I said, if any people that are going to, have a problem with that, you don't need those people in your life anyway. Nobody has any right to tell anybody how they want to live their life. Live and let live. And we wound up having a great conversation. And by the end of the day, I think that he felt quite a bit better about it. But that particular day of him just like having that release about needing somebody to talk to, and needing some type of support from somebody that was sort of, in that particular industry, that was one of the most memorable days I had, because once we got off the water, I could tell that he felt a lot better about it. And, he went into that day with a tremendous amount of anxiety, probably, very nervous about even bringing it up. But somebody like that, or even the Iraqi veteran that I fished with that had the head wound, for them to be able to feel comfortable enough to talk about their personal situations, I felt, pretty honored that they would, trust me enough to do that. So anyway, guys, just wanted to share those stories there about memorable co-anglers. Hope you guys are well. We'll talk later.